The look on my son Julian's face when my lawyer, David Henderson, slid that leather-bound photo album across the mahogany desk, it's a memory I'll take to my grave with a smile. For 7 years, Julian and his sister Clara thought they were playing me for a fool, laughing behind my back while they treated my life's work like their own personal kennel. They stood there in that climate-controlled office, smelling of entitlement and expensive perfume, expecting a windfall. They thought they were there to discuss the early transfer of the family estate, a key to the kingdom they'd done nothing to earn. Instead, they were met with the one thing they never thought I had, the receipts. But to understand why my own children were so terrified of a simple photo album, I need to take you back to the beginning, to the years of sweat and silence that built the ground they were standing on. I'm 72 years old now. I spent 45 of those years building Miller Landscaping and Development from a single rusty truck into the largest firm in the tri-state area. I didn't have weekends. I didn't have mental health days. I had a mortgage, a vision, and a family I wanted to shield from the kind of poverty I grew up in. By the time I retired at 65, I had built The Pines, a 40-acre estate with a main house, 2 guest cottages, and a bird sanctuary that is my pride and joy. I'm not a complicated man, but I have one very specific, very non-negotiable rule: no pets. It isn't because I'm a crotchety old man who hates animals. It's medical. I have severe, chronic respiratory issues, a parting guest from decades of inhaling stone dust and cedar mulch. A single weekend in a house with a long-haired dog can put me in the hospital for a week. Beyond that, the sanctuary on my property is home to several species of ground-nesting birds that I've spent a fortune protecting. My children knew this. They grew up hearing it. It was the one boundary I asked them to respect in exchange for the trust funds, the Ivy League tuitions, and the rent-free living they enjoyed in the estate's cottages. But as I've learned, gratitude has a very short shelf life. The first crock in the foundation appeared about 4 years ago. My daughter Clara had married a man named Mark, a consultant whose primary job seemed to be spending Clara's allowance. They were staying in the West Cottage for the summer. I walked over one evening to drop off some fresh vegetables from the garden and noticed a distinct smell. It was faint, that musky, wet wool scent of a dog, and I saw a single golden hair caught in the fibers of the welcome mat. When I asked Clara about it, she didn't even blink. She laughed and said, "Dad, you're getting paranoid. It's probably just a stray fox passing through. You know how your nose gets." I wanted to believe her. You want to trust your children. But then came the Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago. I was in the kitchen carving the turkey when I heard Julian and Mark whispering in the hallway. Julian is my oldest, the one I'd hoped would take over the firm, though he'd shown more interest in the country club than the construction site. "Did you hide the crate?" Julian asked, his voice low and amused. "Yeah," Mark replied, chuckling. "He's in the trunk of the SUV for another hour. He's fine. The old man is so oblivious these days we could run a Greyhound truck out of the basement and he wouldn't notice as long as we keep the air purifiers on high." "He's just obsessed with those stupid birds," Julian said. "He's lived alone too long. He's losing it." I stood there with the carving knife in my hand, my heart hammering against my ribs. It wasn't just the violation of the rule. It was the mockery. They weren't just breaking my rules. They were laughing at my health and my sanity. If that had been all, I might have confronted them then and there. I might have had a shouting match, they would have apologized, and we would have moved on. But I decided to wait. I wanted to see just how deep the rot went. And that's when I realized. They didn't see me as their father anymore. They saw me as a bank account with a declining expiration date. Over the next year, the disrespect escalated from small secrets to blatant exploitation. I started finding things. A chewed-up corner of a mahogany chair in the library, muddy paw prints on the stone patio that led directly to Julian's guest house. I even found a bag of high-end dog food hidden inside an old fertilizer sack in the shed. They were bringing animals onto the property every single weekend I was away from my treatments in the city. They were even hosting doggy playdates with their city friends while I was, supposedly, too old to notice. The turning point was the incident with the pheasants. I had been working for 3 years to reintroduce a specific breed of golden pheasants to the sanctuary. One morning, I found 2 of them dead near the edge of the woods. They hadn't been eaten by a predator. They had been worried to death, shaken and dropped. And right there in the soft mud was the print of a large canine. Not a fox, not a coyote, a domestic dog. That afternoon, I saw Clara's Instagram. She had a private account, or so she thought, but my assistant is a sharp young woman who knows how to navigate the internet.
She showed me a photo Clara had posted that morning. It was a picture of a sleek black Labrador standing on my back porch, a dead pheasant at its feet. The caption read, "Hunter's first prize, don't tell the Birdman." Something in me shifted that day. The hurt evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I didn't say a word. I didn't call a family meeting. I didn't even change the locks. Not yet. Instead, I made a phone call to David Henderson and a private security firm specializing in discreet surveillance. I spent the next 6 months getting everything in order. They had no idea what was coming. None of them did. They continued to act the part of the doting children, showing up for Sunday brunch, kissing my cheek, and then sneaking their fur babies into the cottages the second my car pulled out of the driveway. They even started complaining about the limited space in the cottages, hinting that it was time I moved into a more manageable assisted living facility so they could move their families and their secrets into the main house. "It's for your safety, Dad," Julian said during one particularly galling dinner. "You're getting older. The stairs are a hazard. We'd be right here to look after you." I just smiled and sipped my wine. "That's very thoughtful of you, Julian. I'll certainly take it into consideration." What he didn't know was that I'd already signed the new trust documents. I'd already spent $15,000 on high-definition, motion-activated cameras hidden in the trees, the eaves of the houses, and even the common areas of the cottages. I had hundreds of hours of footage. I had the photo album. The reckoning happened on a Tuesday. I called them all to David's office, Julian, Clara, and their spouses. I told them we were going to discuss the future of the estate. They arrived looking like they'd already won the lottery. Julian was wearing a new Rolex he'd bought on a credit card he expected me to pay off. Clara was carrying a designer bag that cost more than my first truck. We sat down in the conference room. The air was thick with their smug anticipation.
"Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice calm and steady. "I know you've been concerned about my ability to manage the Pines. You've mentioned that I'm oblivious and losing it. I've taken those concerns to heart." Julian smirked, leaning back. "We just want what's best for you, Dad. The estate is a lot of work. It's time to let us shoulder the burden." "I agree," I said, "but a trust is built on, well, trust, and rules are the foundation in any agreement, especially the no pets rule. I've been very clear about why that exists, my health and the safety of the sanctuary." Clara let out a small, patronizing sigh. "Dad, we've been over this. We've always respected your rules. We would never dream of bringing an animal onto the property. You know how much we care about your breathing." I looked at her for a long moment. She didn't flinch. She lied with the ease of someone who had been doing it for years. "I'm glad to hear that," I said. I nodded to David. David picked up the leather-bound album and slid it into the center of the table. "This," David said, "is a comprehensive record of the property usage over the last 24 months. Julian reached out, his brow furrowing. He opened the first page. It was a crystal-clear shot of him letting a Great Dane out of his SUV in the middle of the night. He turned the page. There was Mark, Clara's husband, laughing as the black lab chased a pheasant across the sanctuary lawn. Page after page of timestamps, high-resolution photos, and even transcripts of their conversations caught on the outdoor mics. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that has weight. I watched the color drain from Julian's face, turning him a sickly shade of gray. Clara's hand went to her throat. Her eyes darted across the photos like she was looking for an escape hatch. This is an invasion of privacy," Mark stammered, his voice cracking. "You spied on us?" "I monitored my own property," I corrected him coldly. "Property you were occupying as guests, rent-free. Guests who were aware of a very specific clause in the residency agreement you all signed when you moved into the cottages." I leaned forward, the kindly old man persona dropping away. Section 12, paragraph B. Any violation of the Animal Prohibition Clause results in the immediate termination of the residency license and the forfeiture of any future interest in the real estate assets of the Miller Family Trust. "Dad, you can't be serious," Clara cried, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. "It's a dog. We didn't think it was that big of a deal. You're overreacting because of some birds?" "It wasn't just the birds, Clara," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut through her hysterics. "It was the fact that you knew it could kill me. You knew I struggled to breathe, and you brought those allergens into the houses I built for you anyway."
You lied to my face every Sunday for years. You mocked my sanity while you cashed my checks. I stood up. I didn't feel angry. I felt light. I felt like I could finally take a full breath of air. The cottages have been emptied, I said. Your belongings have been moved to a storage unit in town. The codes to the gates have been changed. As of 10 o'clock this morning, the trust has been restructured. The pines and the entirety of my estate will be donated to the State Bird Conservancy upon my death. The remaining liquid assets have been moved into a private foundation that you will have no part in. You're disinheriting us? Julian gasped. He looked like he was about to vomit. Over this? Everything you built? You're just giving it away to strangers? I'm giving it to people who respect it. I built this life with my own 2 hands. I provided for you, I protected you, and I gave you every advantage. All I asked for was a little respect and a bit of honesty. You couldn't even manage that.
I walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at them. They looked so small in those big leather chairs. There is a small stipend, I added, enough to cover the rent on a modest apartment for 6 months. After that, you're on your own. I suggest you find jobs that don't involve consulting or social media. It's a tough world out there when you have to pay your own way. As I walked out of the office, I could hear them starting to turn on each other. Julian was shouting at Mark. Clara was sobbing. It was a symphony of their own making. The aftermath was remarkably peaceful. They tried to sue, of course. They tried to claim I was of unsound mind. But David is the best in the business, and the video evidence of them discussing my obliviousness while knowingly breaking the trust rules made their case fall apart before it even hit a courtroom. It's been 18 months since that day. The Pines has never been quieter. The golden pheasants are thriving. I see a new brood of chicks near the pond every morning. My lungs feel better than they have in a decade. Clara calls me every Sunday now. She doesn't ask for money anymore. She knows the answer. She tells me about her job at the real estate firm and how hard she's working. Julian is managing a hardware store 3 towns over. He sent me a letter last month, a real letter, apologizing for what he said. Maybe he means it. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe one day, years from now, we'll have a conversation that isn't about an inheritance. But for now, I sit on my porch as the sun sets over the trees I planted with my own hands. I listen to the birds, and I breathe in the clean, clear air. It's funny how that works. Once you clear out the pests, everything else just seems to fall into place.